Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really delighted to be joined by Viv Grant again. Viv has just done a masterclass recently for us. So for those of you who are in our community, there's the most amazing, very lovely masterclass on overcoming challenges of leadership in there that Viv and I recorded a little while back. But welcome so much, Viv. It's so lovely to have you here. We're so grateful that you've come out of your way to share some of your wisdom and insights with us, because your experience is so valuable to all of us. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Lucy.
Yeah, so those of you who don't know Viv was a head teacher for many years. You were one of the youngest head teachers I've just discovered,
yes.
Which is very impressive. And you are
many years ago. I think you had that many years ago.
And now you are a leadership coach for integrity coaching. Yeah. And not just that, you have written another book. The book is a very beautiful book. And it's based on your true personal story, isn't it? Do you want to just introduce your book a little bit?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that, Lucy. Well, it was a book that I never, ever imagined I was going to write. My first book, Staying Ahead. Well, yeah, that kind of like made sense. I'd been a head teacher, knew what it took to remain as a head teacher. This new book here, Learning to Walk in the Dark, I didn't even know when I was diagnosed with cancer in 2023 that there was something within me that was waiting to be born into the world, really. And it was my whole experience of the diagnosis, surgery and recovery. And I suppose in one respect now, looking back, having that coaching mindset in a sense of, I don't want fear to override how I make my decisions. I don't want fear to really, it's a horrible experience anyway. I mean, so many people, are diagnosed with cancer. But I was just so aware at the time, I just felt like if I wasn't careful and if I didn't manage myself, then I'd be leaning into fear, and that would determine my inner world and how I responded. And so it was only through a lot of really deep self-reflection, a lot of tears and a lot of crying, don't know how, but gradually I just came to a place of silence and solace in myself. And with the help of my friend's daughter, who was an art student, and I'd said that I thought I wanted to maybe paint while I was recovering. And they didn't have an art therapist at the Royal Marsden where I was being treated. And Isha, who is an art student, just jokingly said, "Oh, Viv, I'll be your art therapist." And literally a week after surgery, when I could barely walk, her and my daughter, the most beautiful human beings on this planet, they put fairy lights in the front room, plants, incense, candles. Isha came with paint, acrylic paints and little canvases. And they just said paint. And I remember saying, "But I don't know what to paint. I can't paint." And Isha just said, "Don't overthink it, Viv, just paint." And so I started to paint. And and these paintings then just started to pour out of me. I really couldn't, I couldn't make sense of what was happening at the time, because I have never, ever, I do now, but before I'd never painted before at school, even as a hobby or anything. So at the time it felt quite surreal, but I knew it was very profound. My husband said, you would lock yourself in the little room the whole day and this peace would descend upon the house. And I'd come out of the room and I'd say to my family, "Oh, look at this. Look, I don't understand what happened."
Yeah.
It was beautiful. And gradually what happened was, over a period of time, and I was in therapy, quite obviously, when you're going through cancer and having surgery. And my therapist, I think it was her suggestion, "Well, Viv, you've done so many now, just place them all around you and see if they're trying to tell you something." See, because at the same time as I was painting, I knew I was healing, and I was in a very peaceful place. And when I put them all around me, and I have this knowledge, I had the head knowledge as a coach around the soul's journey, it suddenly all made sense. It's like, oh goodness. Oh, I get it now. it's horrible, and I don't like being in this space. But what these paintings are revealing to me, that this is the archetype of the soul's journey, that every single human being will go on a number of times in their lives. And then it was just like, oh, so that's what it is. But even then, I still didn't intend to put these paintings out into the world. Even then, I didn't intend to put them into a book. Everything was still very raw. I was still very vulnerable. Yeah, but that's the little story behind it all.
Oh, that's a lovely story. And what's incredible is how through your journey of healing and your discovery of art and your love of art, you know, I completely understand and admire. You found those moments where you could reflect, and thinking about the parallels of leadership. There are often times when you are a leader where you do feel completely alone, where you do feel completely out of control. You know, the parallels are quite similar sometimes, probably not as bad, but they are similar. And you can feel very lonely and very distraught. Your whole life can be questioned. You know, your job is maybe on the line, and all of those awful things that happen to us in life. You know, it's lovely to hear that you found solace really through artwork. And you know, what do you say to people who may be going through a tough time in leadership? You know, how can they do what you did? What do they need to do, if you like?
I think you need to be really conscious. First of all, it's interesting. I was with a group of new heads last week, actually, and inviting them into the space because we, as you know, Lucy, every head teacher goes through really difficult times, and the main narrative is that you keep doing. And it's really interesting because the question I asked the head teachers at the very beginning was, what does it mean for you to be well? And it was so interesting because one head said, when they were then feeding back, she went, Viv, I didn't listen to the question properly. Oh, I heard it differently. I heard, what do you need to do to be well? Yeah. And then we all laughed and we all got it. We said, but doesn't that just tell you then how the wider external narrative impacts on our own inner narrative? So in answer to your question, what is the advice I'd give to head teachers who are really struggling? There's adversity that they're having to face. It's almost like turn the dial down on what's going on outside. It's hard because sometimes I think when you're in headship, you don't even realize the extent to which the narrative is impacting on your own inner narrative and how you're treating yourself. So I think it's really important just to find the time, just walk away from your desk. And again, that is everything that I'll be advising today is countercultural. And most heads will like go, no, it can't. But if you don't, then what happens? We know what happens. We have to be very conscious of turning the dial down, making time and space to turn inwards, because this role that you are in, it asks for you to make wise decisions. You can't make wise decisions when you're busy, and you're back to back the whole time. It's impossible. You're being reactive. We need leadership that is responsive. So yeah, that's what I would say, but appreciating that it's difficult. You know, old habits die hard, but it is so necessary, so necessary.
I think it's, and you're absolutely right, and it's allowing yourself the time to think and to stop and to reflect, maybe do some art if you like art, but you get the gist. Go on your own journey, you know, look at something that you love doing, enjoy doing that thing as a way to kind of think things through. And then once you've had that time to reflect and to think, you know, maybe then think, well, how can I lead well going forwards? You know, I was talking to somebody the other day, a PA in a secondary school, and we were chatting about, you know, your week. Sometimes your week is so busy. You've got phone calls coming in, you've got people coming here, and, you know, and then everything goes out the window because something happens and you've got to stop everything you were going to do and do the other thing instead. And he said something really clever, and I thought that was such a good idea. I've never thought of it before. When you think, I do planners, You'd think I would know. He said, plan some empty space in your week. And I thought, wow, that's such a game changer. That empty space in your week, you know, allow things to go wrong by giving yourself some breathing time.
Exactly.
Things are going to happen in school. It's what happens, isn't it?
Yeah.
Allow yourself time to just be.
Yeah, most definitely. And again, it's countercultural, you know, it's again that sense of what I'm allowed not to plan, not to have everything all organized and sorted out, not to be in control. And it's like, yeah, you are. You really, really are. Give yourself that permission. Yeah.
Oh, so it sounds lovely what you did. You were working with the heads last week, you know, for them to have that support from you is really, really lovely. So thinking about inner leadership then, I've noticed that in part of your book, you talk about curiosity a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so again, this has all been like a journey that I hadn't imagined. And, you know, so in the book, I talk about the 5 C's of inner leadership. And what I realized when the book started to come together was actually the way I had been leading myself through the cancer journey. And I began to realize, oh, there were certain qualities that I was actually drawing on or developing or becoming stronger at. And so, yes, there were 5 of them, which was curiosity, commitment, courage, compassion, and connection. But curiosity for me was the one in terms of I can't judge myself around this. And also, I've got to be curious. Obviously, the paintings was, first of all, what's happening here? There was a curiosity here, there, but also, and I know, because again, it's because I coach and I really feel very passionately about coaching, that with coaching, it's about, you know, diving beneath the surface. And that's quite difficult for me, if I'm really honest, because when I applied that question to myself, and it was very painful at times, it was like, okay, so you've been diagnosed with cancer. And what became evident was that my cancer was one that's dominant in women of color. So the curiosity there then was, so what is what's within my storylines? What's within this whole stuff around intergenerational trauma that I have inherited? What is that? And that, it was scary. And now I'm still on that journey of being curious about the particular type of cancer that I had. So it was a sense of actually, inviting in curiosity, inviting in openness, as again, also there's a way for me not to get caught up in fear. If I could just be curious and hold my diagnosis, even though it was heavy, but with a degree of lightness as well. So I wasn't inviting in judgment. I wasn't inviting in fear, in sense of curiosity. Because again, for me, it was a bit like if I can almost adopt like a beginner's mind or that childlike curiosity that I don't necessarily need to be scared of this. It's heavy. It is heavy. I'm not, you know, I had to hold that. This is heavy, heavy stuff. Heavy stuff. But can you adopt an attitude of curiosity around it? And and that helped me. And again, I think of the leaders that we work with and that we coach. And if we can be curious, it does something in terms of just opening up, I believe, anyway, our minds. And we don't narrow, because we become very fixated when we have a problem. We become very fixated, very narrow-minded, and only almost like one line of questioning, which tends just to really funnel down. But if we're curious, we can open up. And so that's what I mean in terms of curiosity as being a real sort of key for inner leadership. I just think it's vital. It's vital because this journey is not easy. I mean, this journey of leadership, of life, is not easy.
And I think when you're leading, you are very good at being curious about the school. You know, you're focused, as you say, on one thing. You know, are our students, pupils, children, whatever you call them, are they learning? Are we having an impact? How do I know? And so you are curious. You're good at being curious, but what you're maybe not so good at being, because leaders are often the last ones to think of themselves, being curious about themselves. You know, how can I make my role easier? What can I do to cut back on stuff? Do I have to do everything? Do I have to do everything today?
Exactly.
Can I reach out for some help? Can can I simplify this? And Jonathan always talks about, can you take away some layers? Layers put on you. Can you take some of those layers off? And I always reflect on that myself. You know, whenever I'm thinking, oh, I really like something, you know, I'm curious about it and I'm going to explore it. But then comes the flip side of that. When you are curious, sometimes what you find out you don't like, and then you think, well, that's because I've done something wrong. I didn't do that well. Everybody say this isn't working. You know, we're due an inspection. Blah 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 blah. And then, so tell us about compassion. How can we have compassion for ourselves, Viv? It's the thing, I think, sometimes the biggest battle.
You're right, it is the biggest battle. And I'm just thinking of a couple of text messages I've had from another head that I'm supporting this. And the thing I said to her, the biggest thing you can do is self-compassion. You can't control this other person. You can't control X, Y, and some of the external circumstances, but you can control your own inner world. That's where the self-compassion comes in. And I think from my own experience and with the heads that I coach, it really is about what are the routines or practices that you will put in place that stabilize you, that are for you alone. And there can be a whole range of things. And I think sometimes what can happen again in headship, again, I'm thinking of the new heads that I was with last week, you know, this sense of, so what, basically, in answer to your question, I showed them this model of the sacrifice syndrome, where you're just giving out all of the time and all your energy is going out. And then how you reset. And how you reset is having relationships where you're allowed to experience empathy and trust, and which helps you to regulate yourself, which then enables you to go back out into the world. And so it's those kind of practices where we show ourselves self-compassion, doing things that we love, maintaining a hobby. You know, I have one head teacher that I coach, and that her thing is a choir. She said, Viv, you'll be so proud of me. You know, I've stuck to it every week. I go and it's my thing. And you know, it's not amazing, it's understandable how these things, they give us joy in leadership. Somehow they get sucked out. We realize we're sacrificing the very thing that is our fuel for showing up, being our full selves with our communities. Somehow we rationalize sacrificing those aspects of our lives that bring us joy. So I think the self-compassion thing, it's things that bring us joy and really taking care of ourselves. And there are all sorts of practices out there that people can do, but I think people have to find what's right for them in terms of that self-compassion, but then be really, what would I say, strict about it in terms of, I'm not going to let this go. This is for me and I matter. Because if I don't care for myself, then I'm giving from an, no, I know we use that phrase a lot, but I'm giving from an empty cup and I can't. So it's, again, I do think it's a mindset thing. I think people get stuck into that way of giving all the time, and realizing the first person you must give to, and it's not selfish, is yourself. It has to be. It really has to be.
Yeah, it is, definitely. And I remember thinking back to my leadership time, and I talk about this a lot, to the point where I'm now calling it the 2:30 time. Because at 2:30, thinking about what you said about routine, every single day I would sit down and I would look at my week. And I think, right, so what's gone well this week? What's been successful? Where has the impact been this week? And I would jot it down. I'd then think, well, what have I got to do tomorrow? And then I'd get myself ready for tomorrow. So I'd write my list, I'd prepare my desk, I'd get everything sorted. And then I think, well, so what about next week? How am I getting on with that? Have I seen or spotted anything along the way this week as I'm walking down the corridor or chatting to people out on the playground that I can record and evidence in as part of our journey as a school? And I think, you know, when you're being compassionate to yourself, if you write down small wins, it doesn't even have to be a big win. It can be just, I drank some water today. Or I made that phone call that I've been putting off, or I sent that email that I was worrying about. Little tiny things do mean something. something. And I find if I write it down, it gets out of my head.
Of course.
I can then be more compassionate with myself, because I think, well, actually, I've achieved something because I can see it.
Exactly.
So the 2:30, I really recommend the 2:30 session. Just take 10 minutes, just be quiet, just thinking, reflection time. It's really, really
what I would call, it's the deliberate pause, isn't it? You're saying at this particular moment in the day, I'm going to press pause deliberately and intentionally. Yeah, all of those things so important.
As you say, it is about routine and habit, because at the beginning I found making space at 2:30 in the day very difficult. And I would often think, well, I can't give myself 10 minutes because I've got all of this to do. But actually I made myself, and then eventually it got to the point where, if I didn't have my 2:30, 10 minutes, 2:30, I would get upset and feel like I'm bereft. I've not had my moments. So it's to sort of plan in your well-being.
Exactly. Yeah. It's, again, as I always say, you have to be intentional with these things. You have to be intentional, and you have to really be committed to yourself.
And then it's about resilience, Viv, because sometimes it's really tough, that you might be going through something really awful, and you're feeling like, do you know what, that's it, I'm done. How do we remain resilient even in the darkest of times?
I mean, there are so many different responses to that question, I think, Lucy. And I think for me, that whole resilience piece, actually, it just comes back to self-care. When I say just, I don't mean just. But what tends to happen, I think the narrative tends to be, when going through adversity, if things are difficult, I will keep on pushing through. But my experience has shown me, as a head teacher, as a coach, as someone who's survived cancer, is when we're in those really difficult moments and the silence is necessary, the solace, the sort of pulling inwards, something is happening at a deep psychological and emotional level, which is to do with building resilience. And if we don't press pause, if we don't have the conversations that support us, we lose sight of it and we don't understand. Because very often what is happening, one of the things is we're being asked to let go. And it can be a variety of things. It can be a habit. It can be a way of thinking. It can be a way of engaging with a particular person. Because what is happening in those challenging times, in order to get to what I call the new dawn or the other side, psychologically, that's about, for you to get to that, you come out renewed, you see life differently, you do life differently. But if you haven't let go in this space here, you're not as resilient as you need to be. Because the resilience is about, okay, this is really hard. I don't like what I'm going through. But if you've got coaching or something else, or a practice that helps you to be still and work out what's going on here, when I say here, I mean in this deep liminal dark space or whatever, and you work out what it is that you need to let go of, then resilience sort of emerges and you come out the other side, because you've learned now. You've learned, okay, this particular word. So I can think of, but if I give an example, really. So he's retired now, this head, and I won't give him a name. So he probably won't be watching this podcast. But one of the things that we worked on when I first met him, because he was really, really unhappy, and no one ever would have known, because he was your be strong head. He was really, and he was quite brusque actually in his relationships with people, because he was also like stereotyped as your turnaround head. So he would go into schools, not really build relationships, but he'd get the results. And he was going through his own really, really dark night. And so going through our coaching sessions, then suddenly what he realized, what he needs to let go of, was this persona of being strong. This persona of, actually, I don't care about relationships. I don't care what other people think of me. It's just results. And when he learned to let go, then resilience showed up for him in a very different way. He came out the other side, and it was beautiful, actually, because what he said to me was, in our penultimate session, he went, Viv, I've made a decision. I was like, well, what's that? And he said, I'm going to stay. I'm going to stay, because normally what he would do, he would turn around to school and then go on. the local authority had already asked him to move on to another school, but that was hurting him. You know, we're built for connection. We're built to be in relationship with one another. And when he realized that actually, oh, this way of being, no wonder I've been in this pit. No wonder it's felt so difficult. No wonder I haven't felt resilient. When he realized what he needed to let go of, then it became different. And he stayed at that school until he retired. So for me, one of the key things about resilience is learning what it is that we need to let go of, because these dark places, as challenging and as awful as they are, they do come with purpose. But sometimes we don't always discover that purpose if what's around us is not nurturing, because also what we need in those dark times. We need either a relationship, a space that is nurturing and protecting and taking care of us.
That's very true. And that's lovely, Viv. And it makes you so much stronger at the end of it, doesn't it? It does. You do learn from those.
Yeah, you do. It's hard, but you do.
Yeah, they're uncomfortable, definitely uncomfortable.
Yeah.
When I think, you know, of the heads and leaders that we chat to, and the weight of the pressure of various different things, there's targets on them. You know, as you say, they might be in a school for a certain reason. They've got to achieve a certain goal. Governors might want them to do something different. Trustees might want them to do something different. The parents are asking them to do something different. Yeah. That takes a certain level of resilience to kind of plow through. And you need to have time for yourself, some reflection time to work out, as you say, what is it that matters? Yeah. What matters to me and what matters to my school? Yeah. What can I let go of? That I don't need to worry about, and then that will help me get through this tricky patch, and it will help me to be resilient at this time. But it's a really, really tough old.
It is tough, because also I think in the role of head teacher, you have so many stakeholders who think they know what your job is, because they've been to school. So because we've been to school, of course we know what it means to be a head teacher. So I think again for head teachers, why the inner space and the space reflect is so important, because you need to be able to come to trust and know your own voice. Too many heads that I have worked with, and again it's understandable, are in this state of confusion because they've got so many other voices surrounding them, and they've lost sight of their own voice and what that means to them. So again, that's why the silence, the space of reflection is important as well, because for me resilience is to do with trusting yourself, knowing yourself. And no matter what, when the hard decisions come, you can stand grounded because you are true to yourself.
I love this, Viv. So we've sort of gone on a bit of a journey. We've started with curiosity. And we've thought about, well, I suppose the next thing is resilience, because you've got to go through this tricky patch in your leadership time. And then during that time, the thing that will help you out is that compassion towards yourself. Allowing yourself time for reflection, allowing yourself time to breathe, and being positive in terms of what you have achieved, even celebrating the small wins. And then we talked about trusting yourself. You know, have trust and confidence in yourself. You are in this position because people believe in you.
Exactly.
Just believe in yourself in order to get through. Is there anything else that you feel would help us to overcome things that we haven't perhaps touched upon? So we've done curiosity, resilience, compassion, trust, routine.
I mean, you know, in the book I talk about the 5 C's, and I suppose, actually, I mean, there probably 3. So the others are commitment, courage, and connection. And actually, when I think about this, I think connection, I mean, courage is, I don't think it's overdone, but I think actually with courage, we forget that vulnerability is the other side of that. And as Brené Brown says, it's not me. You can't get to courage without walking through vulnerability. And I think people need, you know, I think, again, it's enabling head teachers to process that. Because every head teacher would have walked through vulnerability, but maybe not had the process conversation to help them see how that has made them more courageous. So there's something there. But for me, I think it's the connection piece. I really think with education is at the moment. And so, you know, the fragmentation that exists within our system. And one of the things that's become really apparent to me, again, just through all those different phases of my life, is we are part of a greater whole. And I suppose it's actually why head teacher chat exists, really. You know, the relationships, the connections. Yeah. You know, again, you know, we lead in relationships to one another. We need one another. And I think, if anything, there's something around what are the connections that individuals are building. And I think it's connections with others. I think it's connection with self. I do also think it's actually connection with nature and the wider world. I really, really do that. Do think that. I think, again, the sort of norms that are so sort of dominant at this present moment in time, I don't think we respect this planet in the way in which we should. I don't think we realize the degree to which nature is there alongside us. We are part of, not separate from nature. And if we can really, I think for school leaders, it's so important. Again, we're really good, you know, forest schools, getting the kids out and everything. But what about ourselves? Yeah. That deep connection with nature. We were children once, and we still will need that connection with nature, right? Until the days we're no longer here. So for me, it's something about connection, and it's much broader, wider sense. And I do feel for head teachers, actually. I think back to when I was a head, I think the connection piece was probably easier. I think now, and which is why head teacher chat exists, which I've already said, I think because it has become so fragmented, I think it's not so easy to be as connected. I think there's a lot of deliberate competition within the system that doesn't help. So I think connection is really, really important. So important. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Viv. And you're absolutely right. I think, you know, for leaders nowadays, you know, to be able to talk to other leaders is getting harder and harder and harder. They've got more time pressure than ever before. And I never thought I'd say that, but they really have. I mean, I didn't know how they could have more time pressure, because I felt pressured. They have more time pressure than ever before. As you say, the competition is harder than it ever was before. Things are changing so rapidly. We've got new governments, we've got budgets going all over the place, we've got national insurance stuff coming in. There's so much going on that sometimes you just don't know who to turn to or who to ask. So please reach out, everyone. If you are struggling and you're finding it difficult, Viv is super smashing and very lovely, as you can see. I will pop Viv's information underneath this podcast for you all, and so that you can contact Viv if you would like some of her amazing coaching sessions. But also I will put our details down there too, and I shall also signpost some wellbeing support too, because we are all in this together. That is what we're all here for. We're here to help and support, and it is important to us. This is our mission, Viv, is to make sure that no leader is on their own. So that's what we're doing, and so it's a pleasure to have you here today, Viv. Thank you so much. Show us your book. Come on then, give us a plug.
Here it is, Learning to Walk in the Dark. And please, you know, the lessons in here are universal. We're all human. We all go through dark times. And as you can probably see, this isn't heavy on words. It's meant to be a reflective companion so that you can find out how to travel through your own dark night. And as I always say, and find the light within. Every one of us. It might go out or feel like it's gone out. It's never totally gone out. And there are ways to relight it, reignite it again. So
there's always
on Amazon. Yeah.
There's always hope. Congratulations, Viv, on the launch of your new book. It is now on Amazon. We'll put the link underneath here so that you can have a look at it. Yes, so we hope you found this session helpful. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Lucy.